E ngā mana, e ngā reo na hauwha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora whānau. Welcome to the Big Bad Cons panel from the depths of the South Pacific, where we're talking about KiwiRPG or Kiwi Whakatau or Aotearoa. Here in Aotearoa, it is customary to, with proper English, to initiate any sort of meeting like this, any gathering where we're coming together to sort of talk and share minds with a karakia, which is a indigenous of incantation, calling upon the mana of everyone present, as well as anyone in the audience and the wairoa of everywhere around us to sort of come together and ensure we have a productive sort of kōrero and come together sort of in peace and bring our minds together and see what comes out of it. So with that, I'm going to quickly bang out a karakia before I hand you over to our host, our moderator. So let's get into it. Whakataka te hau kei te uri, whakataka te hau kei te tonga. Kia makina ki uta, kia matata ki tai. E hia ki ana, tata kura, he tio, he huka, he hau hau, ti hei Māori ora. Kia ora whānau. Hamish, she's all yours, bro.
Cheers, Liam. Kia ora koutou, everyone. Hello to all of the Big Bad fam out there, or the Big Bad whānau, as we might say in New Zealand. So some of you may know me. My name is Hamish Cameron. I'm a game designer and ancient historian who spent several years in the US, mostly in Los Angeles, and have now returned to Aotearoa, New Zealand, where I live and teach at the University of Victoria in Wellington. I don't live at the University of Victoria, I should say, actually. I live in Wellington and I teach at the University of Victoria. I'm not a grad student anymore. I don't have to live in my office. So I'll be the moderator for today. And we have a set of lovely panelists who will introduce themselves, starting with Liam.
Yeah, kia ora. Where do I start these things? Primarily, I'm Taua Tabletop, which is a brand that I put together which promotes sort of cultural sensitivity, cultural consultation. It's a podcast, formerly Mud and Blood, and also game design and bits and pieces like that. Just a bit of a catch-all busybody RPG person rather than anything specific. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. And about me specifically, I'm Māori, evidently. Hopefully that was obvious. And I whakapapa ngati kānuni koutou Wairoa. I originally come from the east coast of New Zealand, but I'm now living in Otutahi, Christchurch. Anyway, next, my good bro Morgan.
Kia ora. I'm a Pākehā New Zealander. My people go back to Ireland, to Scotland. I spent some time in Scotland about a decade and a half ago and met some good game people, and that's my latest game project that some of you might have heard about, which I'm going to promote heavily whenever I can, which is A State from Handiwork Games. So I've been working on that from down here in New Zealand. I'm living in Lower Hutt near Wellington. My name is Morgan Davey, and it's pretty exciting to be here at Big Bad Con. So kia ora, and kia ora to the other panelists here. I'm going to hand off now to Liz.
Hi, that's me. My name's Liz, and I am from Waipa. That's my cat, I'm sorry. Which is just south of the Waikato. Pākehā, obviously. And I am not a game designer at all. I've never designed a game. I have no desire to design a game. However, I love to play different games, and I got involved with KiwiRPG out of a desire to promote and support people who are making these wonderful games within New Zealand. I think we've got a incredible group of people here who are really making something special, and as someone who is not interested in doing the making, but I am interested in doing the promotion and the shouting out to everybody how amazing these people are, because of course, as we all know, New Zealanders don't like doing that about themselves. I thought I would come to my very first Big Bad Con to talk a little bit about what I've been hoping to achieve within KiwiRPG. So yeah, that's why I'm here, and I'll pass it on off to Vex.
Kia ora. I'm Vex. I'm a tangata Tahuti, which means that I'm here in this land by the grace of the Treaty of Waitangi, which is a thing with a real complex history here, but we're not going to get into that. I have a game design illness. I cannot stop making games, and no one can stop me making games. You can find me at Hexavexagon, basically anywhere, but especially on Itch, where yesterday I released a major project that I've been working on for at least 2 years called Hunting Billionaires for Sport. And it just does what it says on the package. Back to you, Hamish.
Thanks, Vex. So those of you who were paying careful attention to the promotional material and the schedule will note that we are down a person. Our colleague Jack Blair can't be with us today because of illness. So if you're listening, Jack, then get well soon. But I hope you're not. I hope you're just chilling and probably asleep, actually.
Yes, please be asleep and resting.
Yeah, it's a good time to be asleep. Great. So what else did I want to say before I begin questions? If you want to find links to all of the projects that people are involved with, do check out the bios on the Big Bad page where there's links to various things. And we'll probably bring up various things that we're engaged with over the course of the hour as well. But we have a series of questions that I will pose to the panel, and we'll have a bit of a conversation around those at Cordero. And if you have questions, then you can put them in the Twitch chat, and they will be forwarded through the back channels to us, and we will attempt to answer those as well if we have time, which I think we will. So where I'd like to start is going to Liam and talking about our values, because I think one of the things that I find particularly excellent about KiwiRPG as a community is the way that those values have really, it seems to me, been embedded in the community from the start and have been a very central part of what we're attempting to do in setting up this community and in generally kind of just trying to grow tabletop role-playing games in all of their creativity in New Zealand. So Liam, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, no, it was interesting, right? So this whole thing sort of kicked off, I think it was 6 months ago, the last Big Bad, sort of kind of a bunch of us spoke and we all thought this was awesome, let's keep this up. And then it sort of grew from there. And very early on in the piece, I was fortunate in that I was the person setting up the Discord. So I was in a position to sort of somewhat steer the conversation when it came to sort of what we call a kaupapa in Te Ao Māori, which is like the essence of the thing, the reason of the thing. You know, it's sort of your value statement, your mission statement, all of that, your objective. But so like one thing I thought it was key to establish early on, and everyone else was on board, is that what makes New Zealand unique from any other part of the Anglosphere is the fact that we have this complex sort of intercultural thing going on here, this bicultural thing going on. And a part of that is, obviously you've got Pākehā and all Tauiwi on one side, then you've got Tangata Whenua Māori on the other. And it was obviously important to me to represent those Māori values. And part of that is actually very community focused, community for individual in all aspects, right? And that's the whole purpose of a community. So I thought, cool, Te Ao Māori, perfect place to start as a building block for what we're going to try and make this community from. And we established that early in the kaupapa, that no one person owns KiwiRPG. It's not here about rising individuals up above the heads of everybody else. It's about all of us coming together and working together, working under the principles of, the Treaty of Waitangi, which is about, protection, partnership, all that sort of stuff, participation, as well as just sort of trying to be an inclusive open space. We wanted to help. It's a community that serves the broader New Zealand beyond just the people within it. We're trying to improve things. So it was really important, I think, early on to establish that that you know, a lot of communities start with like a chat room and a Discord, people start getting to know each other and stuff, and then 10 months down the line, it's like, oh, we're pretty big now. We should have some rules and we should figure out what we're actually doing. It's like, nah, we had to establish early. This is what we're doing. You know, we want to represent the bicultural state in New Zealand, and we want to sort of work together, work with one another to bump everybody up. You know, regardless of, because we've got some really well-known people in the scene here. We've got some people who've done some great stuff, and we've got some people who are just coming into it. And every one of those people is equal, you know. And we want to pull upon the knowledge of those people who've been in the industry a long time to help empower the people who are coming in now. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that so far, you know. And we're still working on it. We're still working on our representational sort of stuff like that, and especially with, you know, Indigenous voices. There's very few of us in there, but we're growing. I've noticed the growth since we've been there. So I like to think the kaupapa is working, but I'm keen to hear from the rest of the panel. What's your thoughts on our values and how things are going in our kaupapa? You know, let's, you know, Morgan, you were there from the start. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that we're kind of lucky in a sense for the timing of this community coming together, the decision to make KiwiRPG into something ongoing, that we were able to kind of lean on the challenge of dealing with the fact that Aotearoa New Zealand is a bicultural society. And maybe 20 years ago, it would have been pretty easy for a bunch of Pākehā designers like me to just say, well, that's kind of in the too hard basket. We'll deal with that when it comes to it. And we don't know many Māori designers anyway. It'd be nice to have them. And now, like our country has moved on a lot lately, and that's just not acceptable anymore. It wasn't really acceptable then, but it's really clearly not acceptable anymore. And so that forced us to grapple right at the start with all of these things that you're talking about, Liam, and to establish this kaupapa. And I think it meant that everyone bought into it. Everyone could see the need, everyone could see the value, and everyone knows that there's potential to kind of do a good job of making this community work right from zero, right from the ground up. So yeah, thank you for your mahi, putting a lot of effort, a lot of thought into getting that right, and carrying a lot of load as the kind of the main member of tangata whenua in the community. There's a lot of people looking to you for leadership there, and so that's a burden that you've had to shoulder, and you've done so with a lot of grace. So thank you for that.
I will say on that front is a few years ago I went looking for other tangata whenua game designers and couldn't find any. Right now, thanks to this community, I know of 3 of us. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a 300%, well, 200% increase, right? That's significant. That is significant. So I'm happy that we're there, and now that we've had this KiwiRPG week, we're getting it out there. Hopefully, some people are watching this and maybe know some people that want to prod our way. It's going to keep growing, right? Like I think it's, I mean, just getting one of those people through the door was worth it. You know, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, everything else is just gravy now. You know, I'm happy as.
Absolutely, and I think even more so to that is now that KiwiRPG is a community that is starting to get more well known within New Zealand. It feels like it will give more people, and more diverse people especially, more opportunities to experiment within the TTRPG space. It can be very scary if you feel like you're doing it alone, if you feel like, you know, you're the only Māori person making games in New Zealand, or you're the only whatever. But knowing that there is a support group behind you that has a strong kaupapa that will respect you and promises and to respect you and your work and what you're doing is, I think, really important for a lot of people, especially people who are just starting out, who might be, you know, experimenting with making TTRPGs. I did really enjoy how you described what you wanted people within KiwiRPG to be in the Gizmodo article, Liam, when you said that you were a kaitiaki instead of, you know, a founder. It's kind of like a guardian. And well, Liam obviously knows that. I'm not explaining that to Liam. But To be a kaitiaki is to have a certain amount of mana in the project that I don't think a word like a founder or an owner would necessarily represent. And I think it's quite an important word to be able to use to describe people who are collaborating within the space at the moment.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add to that is, Liam, you said that you were fortunate to be there to guide this conversation, and I think really we were all fortunate to have you there to guide this conversation, because it's clear that you not only have you done a really good job of it, but also you've brought like an understanding and an energy to it that I don't think anyone else would have been able to do.
Oh, thanks for that. I don't like the way everyone's thanking me. It was a group effort. It was a group effort. All right, we're a team. We all turned up on the day.
This is where the banners drop down behind us and we reveal it's actually an intervention to thank Liam. Must have a big cake. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think those are all great comments, and I heartily agree with all of them. I think one of the things that, for me at least, as somebody who thinks of myself as part of the tabletop design community, and like I do a little bit of video game streaming, but I don't really consider myself a streamer. One of the things that KiwiRPG has done also from the beginning is incorporate the creative energy of streamers into the project, and not just as promotional outlets for tabletop designers, right? In a way that obviously you want to try and make contact with streamers in order to get your product in front of people or whatever. But I think we really did from the start, like, conceive of this as a sort of team effort. And I wonder if you could speak to that a bit, Morgan, as probably the person who drove that, I think.
Yeah. So this is kind of the journey from the Big Bag Con panels 6 months ago to where we're at now. Kind of the first moment is, as Liam said, that we established that those people were going to get together, and we set up a Discord and we started talking with each other, having a designer space. In parallel to that, there was a bunch of organization that was happening over in the podcaster streamer community out of Aotearoa, and I have some strong connections into that community as well. I am part of a group called Diceratops. We do comedian improv style Dungeons and Dragons on stage in Wellington. Have a great time with that, and we put that stuff out on podcasts. So that kind of gives me a vested interest in understanding the challenges of putting something out into the world that's based in games, and kind of seeing that organization happening over there and seeing what was happening with the designer side. It was just really clear to me that there were a lot of commonalities in there. There's a lot of interest in how do we reach out beyond our initial circles? How do you market your stuff? How do you connect what's happening down here in New Zealand with the other side of the world? And the other thing that I think made those parallels really strong to me is that we are a small country. We're a small nation. There's a lot. I mean, it's not true that everyone knows everyone, but it is true that everyone kind of does know everyone. Like there's not too many steps in between any two people. And so I'm not the only person that has connections on the design side and the podcasting side. There's a bunch of others. Liam, for example, has he's doing that as well. So there's a lot of really close connections. There's a lot of friendships. It's a really natural thing to make those connections, make them a bit more active and a bit more real. So as we started thinking about that, we thought, well, one of the things that we could do is set up a hashtag, a KiwiRPG hashtag that we could stick on things and use to talk on Twitter, and then we could see each other's stuff, if it was a game, if it was a podcast, whatever it was, and then we could promote it. And that idea of a hashtag turned into this whole week of events. It started out as, let's just do a hashtag and maybe one week we'll all use the hashtag. Well, it's become a little bit more than that, with lots of special events and streams, and yeah, it's been a pretty amazing development. But the podcast community as well as the design community have both really got on board. There's been lots of engagement with what the other side is doing. Although they're organizing in different spaces this year, I think there's certainly been a huge increase in understanding and awareness of what the kind of other side of that local equation is dealing with and where those commonalities are. And we've seen a couple of events that have brought the two sides together to make kind of crossovers happen. I think, Liz, you might be able to speak to that a little bit because you've been involved in some of them.
Yeah, I was actually involved in all of them in the end of it. I was employed as a pinch hitter. Some people had to drop out, and I scurried on in there and said, "I'll stream." Yeah, absolutely. I love being on camera. So, the first, we've had 3 big specials so far for KiwiRPG Week, and and 2 of them have been actually playing games that have been made in New Zealand. The first one was Monster of the Week, and the second one was D12 Go, which is a brand new system that just came out, and the creator of the system actually was also the DM of the game, which was really cool. But it was really heartening to see how people got on board and helped each other out with this kind of stuff. It was really last minute, all of the streams, really. We just said, hey, does anybody want to play Monster of the Week? We need a DM, we need 5 players. And people just got on board and really got into it and used that time not only to promote themselves, but to promote KiwiRPG Week, to get excited about it, and used it to shout out their favorite streamers, their favorite games, and it was a really fun experience, actually. So I think connecting games with streamers and podcasters, I think it's a good decision. I think it was quite a natural one to do. So it's been great so far. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next. But I'm not sure what that'll be.
I just want to add one little point to add some context around what Liz has been saying. I realized that to understand where we were starting with, the game Monster of the Week, which is easily the most well-known and successful game generated out of New Zealand, most of the people involved in podcasting and streaming out of this country had no idea that it was made here, had no idea that they knew people in common.
I didn't.
With the design.
I didn't.
I didn't until this community started. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So that's kind of been a sample of just how disconnected all of the Kiwi creatives have been up until this point.
Yeah.
I think including like the streamers and podcasters has been valuable because it represents the modern state of the hobby, right? Yep. There's this sort of divide online between the two groups, but in reality, like streaming and playing in a way that other people can participate passively has become a part of our hobby, whether we like it or not, right? So incorporating them has been huge, and also it's just going to help grow the hobby overall within Aotearoa, which benefits everyone because that results in more streamers, and that results in more players, and players tend to turn into designers. So it's win-win-win, you know? Like, it just makes sense, and it makes up for our small size too. Other countries can afford to have sub communities that are distinct. We can't. We're too small. We need to rally together.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question then, because I am conscious that the time is ticking away. And that's about what was that? Sorry.
It is ticking away. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's about barriers and barriers that we might want to break down through our design or through this kind of collaborative exercise. And I want to turn to Vex first to talk about that, challenges that people might face and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so gonna start this with a quick story, which I'll try and make very quick. I've been making games for a very, very long time, but not seriously as a hobby until about 5 years ago, when I discovered the Indie TTRPG Twitter, which was just migrated from Google+. And that was mostly the RPG scene, at least the people that caught my interest and who I was exposed to at that time. And at that point, I made TTRPGs for like a couple of years before I even found the local Wellington game designer meetup that Hamish and Dana run. And in my experience in that time, and even some time after, one like major recurring thing that I saw happening is like everyone will tell people, just like strongly encourage everyone else to make games, because everyone wants to dispel the myth that it's very hard to make a game. So there's a lot of value to that message, but at the same time, there's a lot that goes unsaid about it. And while you're making these solo projects on your own, you're learning about the things that are good and bad about your design style, but you're learning all of that the hard way, and at the same time, you're constantly seeing these projects, beautiful indie projects on Twitter that have dozens of writers, full page artwork, and like successful Kickstarters. And really, there's no pipeline to get from that space where you're at to the space where they're at, doing like collaborative work with a lot of other talented people. Especially if you want that to be done on your own projects. Because how are you supposed to convince people to work with you when you are the small fish in the pond? So that's a barrier that I'd really like to work on breaking down. And the way that we can break that down as a community is essentially by having a community. Because not only does working with others bring out the best in your own work, it also allows you to form stuff like better payment structures. So you're working with cooperatives that are explicitly anti-capitalist rather than feeding into the industry another business that makes the money flow up. And so we can't necessarily break down that barrier with just like a single clear approach, but having the support of a local community does a massive amount towards helping us to like at least partially solve it. It gives us access to avenues for mentorship, helps us to connect with other game designers, layout designers, artists, editors, cultural consultants, etc. Just like whatever particular set of skills you need a person to have. If you've got a community, you've at least got like a decent way of finding those people. It gives us a lot of space to talk about various market platforms like Itch or Drive-Thru or Kickstarter, and how and why they do and don't work for us, like what problems that they have and can we solve those problems or not. It gives us a chance to learn from people who love the things that we hate, which is always very fascinating to me, because if I go on Twitter and look at like any post tag D&D, I'm like, I don't want to engage with these people. There's like game designers in the Discord talking about D&D. I'm like, wow, you've got fascinating opinions about these things, and you're not being horrible about it too.
That's key.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it, and obviously, as mentioned before, linking up with the podcast, which is one of the best ways to get games into a market, which we otherwise don't have very strong avenues for. So it kind of feels like to solve this problem, we have to build a house, and each of these separate things is a brick that we're laying down on this house, but each of those bricks is on like supported by a foundation, and that foundation is having that access to local community.
That's a really good metaphor.
Absolutely. Couldn't have really said it better. I've been really heartened by the community. I mean, I've only been involved with KiwiRPG for maybe, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, not very long. I just came in and was like, hi guys, I want to help out. Here I am. And here I am. But seeing everybody discuss ideas in the Discord and being so open and willing to talk about their own games and other people's games, and there's no malice, there's only people only want to help everybody else, and I really feel like everybody's building this house together, which is a really lovely thing to be a part of.
Yep. I could say a lot, but running out of time and I talk too much.
Yeah, let's move on to the next question then, and stick with Liz then about lessons that we've learned from KiwiRPG from somebody who, like, I mean, You may say that you joined 3 weeks ago, Liz, but I would never have guessed that. And also, I don't think
No.
the totally legendary social media presence that we'd have would be anywhere near possible without the work that you've put in, the incredible amount of extremely hard work. So,
thank you so much.
big
Yeah.
ups for that. Yeah, what lessons have you learned?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did have kind of an idea about about supporting. Well, because I came from the podcasting scene, I was originally thinking of doing a kind of business model that would support podcasters and streamers. And when I had learned about KiwiRPG, I just said, "Oh, do this instead." So I just jumped on. But I did write down a little list because I got nervous. So I will read that out. So feel free to interrupt me. But as I was coming on board as primarily a support person, I've spent the last 3 weeks using social media to experiment and learn about how to promote both KiwiRPG, the concept, and also KiwiRPG, the products and people. There is a real desire within this community to uplift and promote each other. People have talked about it before. Both the podcasters will do crossovers and we'll talk about each other. And a lot of the game designers have this beautiful community that I've seen that really wants to uplift everybody else. So we really want to welcome and support each other, and there is a desire to do right by others. And Kiemu Whakato o Aotearoa it provides a framework for all New Zealanders in the TTRPG distribution scene to see each other and what we offer and how we can support each other. Because sometimes it's not about it's about knowing how to promote ourselves and how to support each other, and we can learn from each other using the Kiemu Whakato Aotearoa framework that has been provided by the website and the social media pages and people on the Discord and people in the Facebook chats. So using KiwiRPG as a focal point in social media for news and releases and important announcements, I think has been the most effective way to use this kind of official channel as it is. It's just me. I'm just searching through all the hashtags and retweeting everybody and writing things up when I have the time. But it's a way to not only promote to other people, but also to let each other know what we're all up to. Like you said, Vex, you spent 5 years striking out there on your own before you met the local community. So being able to give people the opportunity to begin their work within a community is something that I think is really important, and something that I would like to give people the opportunity to do if I can, which means obviously uplifting and shouting out KiwiRPG as a concept. So using the official KiwiRPG social media pages to announce things like game drops and streams, I think has been the most useful, as opposed to using it to kind of do just, hey guys, have you heard about this podcast? You should check them out, which is fine. It's something that I'll continue to do, but using it in more of a directed way has been a lot more effective, I think, especially with the game drops has been really helpful. So, but what I've really learned, the big lesson that I've learned is we're all just kind of making it up as we go along. I said something in the Discord recently about, oh, maybe I could work on putting together a framework for people, a resource that they can use to create their own media packs, so they can use this and feel confident promoting their work as something that, we know this works, you can use it too. And Mike, who made Monster of the Week, as we've previously said, extremely successful, he said, that sounds great. I've been making it all up, all of my marketing. I don't know what I'm doing. It would be amazing to have some kind of framework. So we really are all kind of stumbling along together and using each other as resources and helping each other out. So as from the Twitch question, which was previous, which was a good question. Thank you. I really think promoting yourself also involves promoting other people, being willing to connect with other people on a genuine level, using people whose values align with your own to promote your work. If you're a game designer, get in contact with some streamers, some podcasters. Ask them if they would be willing to pick up your game for a one shot. If they're in your area, if their values align, if they're passionate about games like you are, what's the worst that can happen? And streamers, get out there and see what games are on offer, because there's some really cool ones, and you'll have a lot of fun playing them and promoting them for other people. But yeah, so I think the lessons that we've learned is that yeah, we're all just trying to have a good time, and we're trying to uplift each other together, and everything that one person does is something that we can all use together to break down those barriers of distance and time and promotional, how to get out there. But yeah, that's everything that I've written down here. So
did you want to follow up on that, Vex?
Yeah,
anybody wants to interrupt me?
Something that I've learned about from KiwiRPG Week is just that there's a massive willingness to get involved, and I think that's because we're like quite culturally siloed here. There are very few things that make it into international recognition, but there's a very large community of people who are like really into this for the hobby, like people who really care about it. And so when, for instance, whenever someone has raised something in the Discord and been like, oh, we could do this thing, every time it gets picked up like within 2 hours by someone who has the right skill set for that. And that's how we've achieved so much this week.
Yeah, it's been incredible. People who have different skill sets working together to promote everybody all at once. And I think that's why KiwiRPG Week has been the success that it has been.
Yeah, and in game design terms, as well as like connecting to the podcasters, there's a thing where I think people who are working on small projects are quite reluctant to pay other people to work on their projects with them, because no one has the budget for that, right? But the thing is, even if you're paying someone to do that work, what you get is then a project that you've both worked on and you're both proud of. So that work also gets exposed to their whole Twitter audience and whatever followings they have. So there's like additional value that comes in that way. And that's, again, what you were saying about like, you have to really connect with people and not just try and promo by yourself.
Absolutely. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No. I'm all done. I talked for too long.
I was just going to ask if Morgan and Liam had any thoughts on that topic, or do we want to go to audience questions?
I reckon we bang into audience questions. There's been a few of them.
Right. Yeah. So
we're all quite verbose.
So Liz has already handled the one about it being hard to hype your own projects. So let's go to the second one, which is really interesting. So does Pākehā in Aotearoa bring a perspective that differs from that of what we might call traditional whiteness in TTRPGs as seen in the US or UK scene? What opportunities do Pākehā have to promote a better outlook in global communities? Who wants to tackle this? I feel like Morg, you've spent a lot of time in the UK. You probably have some thoughts here.
Yeah, like it's an interesting question, and it has some challenges when you try and grapple with it. I think optimistically, the experience of what's unfolding at the moment in Aotearoa and how that is being felt in our community, the Kiemu Whakato role-playing game scene, is, I think it's really promising. for being open to a sharing of cultural power. There's been, through the history of New Zealand, Aotearoa, this real sense of the importance of culture coming from overseas and landing here, which we then kind of absorb and reproduce. So it's been a Pākehā dominant environment, but what Pākehā has meant has been what we imported from England, and more recently what we have imported through our television screens from the United States of America. And that has kind of been this cobbled together culture that we've had. And so part of the journey that we're on right now is, as the tangata whenua of Aotearoa having a greater and greater and greater voice all the time, is to grapple with the fact that we're not those places. We are our own place with our own challenges and our own communities, and we should embrace that. And so what we're actually trying to do here is find a different way of existing as white people, as settlers in a bicultural community. And it's not just us, of course. There are people from other societies. There's a really strong Chinese presence in this country that has been there since almost as long as there have been anyone else, any other white people here. So like the settler society here is already diverse, and we're having to grapple with that as well. So part of that, I think, is what I see as the big challenge before us as game designers, is starting to actually represent our own country in the kind of game design content that we are making. The streamers and the podcasters, I think, are starting to get to grips with this. There's been a lot of people making podcasts and streams that are set in this country, but making a game that you can have ready for someone on the other side of the world pick up and play, that is dealing with here, that feels like a challenge that we're only just coming to grips with. And if you look across the content that we have been producing over the years, there's not much that actually speaks to this country. So I think kind of boiling it all down, if there's anything to learn from what we're going through, it's not there yet. But I think if you watch the kind of games that we're producing, the kind of stuff that the podcasters and streamers are doing, you're going to see us working through these issues in real time. And maybe soon there will be something useful that comes out of it that will be informative for people in other places.
Yeah, I think New Zealanders certainly are in a position where we are wrestling with, or Pākehā New Zealanders certainly, well, all New Zealanders are wrestling with the implications of colonialism in New Zealand. And Pākehā in particular represent wrestling with the issue of like our own role in it. But one thing I think it is important to note is that, and this is sort of agreeing with this question, that there are subtle differences between colonialism as it appears everywhere. And those differences might be relatively minor on the scale of things, but they do make a difference. And so I certainly noticed the difference between being somebody who was white in America, but not being a white American, right? And not absolutely not identifying with being a white American, but I am absolutely a Pākehā, right? I am absolutely a white New Zealander, but that means something different to me here. And it also means something different as somebody who accepts the term Pākehā, which is also contested. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very complicated question that, to be honest, that could be an entire panel on its own. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
Maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe.
I do think having traveled the world a bit as well and interacted through my podcast, etc., with people from all around the world, I do think there is something about the distinctively bicultural nature of, Aotearoa that does create a different mentality around these sorts of things. There is an understanding, this idea of white as the default is still prevalent in New Zealand because of colonization, but there is an understanding that there is an accepted other in the mix, whereas overseas there's this idea of a generic melting pot, in my experience as an outsider, and a generic sort of like we are these people, as opposed to like, well, there's multiple groups in this country and we're dealing with it, at least as far as I can tell as an outsider anyway. And I think that that breeds a certain sort of mindset. And I think as well that it's important to note that at least within our community, it's especially quite progressive in its views towards that discussion, which helps. There's a lot of people who are doing some soul searching and understanding their place in things. And because when you're trying to make games to market internationally, you have to ask yourself, what is a Kiwi? Right? And for so long, as Morgan pointed out, we were British people who watched American TV and were good at rugby, right? And now it's becoming a bit more sort of different. There's a bit more of an understanding where actually our points of difference are the fact that we are part of a relationship in this nation and all that sort of stuff. I think anyway, that's my take on it as a tangata whenua anyway.
Yeah, I think what you said there about the difference between the way we think of it in New Zealand being more bicultural versus the sort of melting pot idea, where of course the melting pot idea is just that all of the people who aren't of the dominant culture become subsumed within the hegemonic sort of culture, right? Which is the way that some people in New Zealand would want it to happen, but I don't think it's certainly not the way that we think about it in our community, and I don't think it's the way that most people in New Zealand think about it nowadays.
No. Yeah, no, not at all.
I really like that as a place to end. And we only have a few more minutes to go, so that's very appropriate. There was one more question from the audience about whether KiwiRPG is in contact with university societies. That seems like a really specific technical thing, so we'll talk about that in the Discord afterwards. And if you have other questions, then I do invite you to go into the channel on the Discord and ask anything and get in contact with us in any way you want. And we'll have some links to things that you can pick up now. There's a bundle on Drive-Thru, there's a bundle on Itch. There are still a few streaming events to come over the rest of the week, maybe even some game drops. And there's a whole lot more you can find on our website, and we'll put all of that in there. So just as one final thing, does everybody have like a kind of final thing to say, just in a sentence or two, as we sink back down into the Pacific and wait for the Sean and John show? Should we go, Liz?
Oh, me first. Okay.
Yeah.
What I have to say is follow KiwiRPG. KiwiRPG.com is our website. KiwiRPG on all social media sites. It has an underscore on Twitter, which I'm really annoyed about. But go and follow us everywhere. There's games dropping. There's streams happening. It's wild, it's crazy, and don't forget to pick up Vex's game. Don't forget to pick up Vex's game because it's not part of the bundle. So pick up both the bundles, but also Vex's game, Big Tough Shirt, guys, because it's only $1.20 at the moment,
$1.20.
and it's amazing. So you should definitely buy it. And that's me.
Yeah, I'm gonna extend that sale because I realize I think it ends very soon. And a lot of people are probably only going to see the VOD of this one, so I'll just put it forward another week. So you've got time to pick up that game for a ridiculous price. It's a stupid game. It's a lot of fun. You should play it. And as for my sign off, make games. Talk to your local community if you can find them. If you can't find them, try harder. And hunt
make them.
Make it. Yeah, Morg.
Cool. Only thing I'm going to say is that the lesson of KiwiRPG for me has been the power and the importance of lifting each other up. So find your local community, love them, lift them. We all go up together.
I take that if you're a Kiwi game designer, come get involved. If you're thinking about becoming a game designer, come get involved. If you're a Māori game designer, come get involved. And if you're really worried about it, talk to me and I'll look after you. It'll be fine. We'll be all good. We'll make it work. Yeah. Sure.
Fantastic. So thanks to all the panelists. Thanks for watching. This has been great. Love you all, Big Bad community. Yeah.
Sure.
Ka kite ana.